back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining me today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we've got a guest with us today, Heath. Say hello, Heath.
Hey, everybody.
You have to acknowledge us verbally. The wave, I mean.
It'll work.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we're going to.
Hello, everyone. From sunny Columbia, South Carolina.
Sunny South Carolina.
That's nice. It's sunny there. That's good.
Dan and I got to know Heath several years ago now, originally through another peer group that we were involved in. All of us were involved in. BuildWit did some marketing for us. They did some peer group gathering for us, and we've stayed in touch with Heath over the last what is it?
It's been a while now.
5 years?
5-6 years. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be more than that because it's before COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID, and that's the measuring stick. Pre-COVID,
so
post-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. So probably like 2018, maybe 2018, 19.
Yeah, geez, okay.
Yeah, so maybe 7 years.
7 years. Holy smokes!
Yes.
And so we'll do a little brief introduction here. Heath, give us like the 30-second elevator speech. Who is Heath Hanna?
So I'm born and raised in South Carolina. Kind of grew up in the construction industry. My dad had a small HVAC mechanical company. Did that growing up, but worked on the farm with my grandfather and stuff. And then when I was in high school, ended up going to work for a friend and started running equipment. Really liked it, yada, yada, yada. Came out of college and found my way to the cat dealership as a trainer, product specialist. And then kind of got tired of living in Atlanta. So we decided to kind of make a leap and start Contour back then and kind of built it up. We're 13 years old now. So we're heavy civil contractor here in South Carolina, mainly focused in South Carolina, but we do some work in Georgia and North Carolina as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the 30,000 foot view.
That's perfect. And the heavy civil is kind of what brought us all together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the BuildWit heavy civil connection there. We found people that were fun to hang out with and like-minded and in similar industries, and kind of continued to build that relationship over the past, I guess, 7 years.
Yeah, past 7 years.
Yeah.
And Heath's company is Contour Mining.
Yeah,
Contour Mining, South Carolina.
And you have a demolition division as well?
Yeah, so we did an acquisition a few years ago of a 50-year-old demolition company here in Columbia. Acquired them to kind of help diversify a little bit and give us some more shop office space and stuff. So that's been a little bit different transition there, a lot different thinking. And it's been a very good learning experience.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
And what's Heath? So what's your sort of bread and butter, just for people that don't know Contour Mining, in terms of
kind of
earthwork?
We started out doing mostly all mining work, infrastructure work for quarry and aggregates. There's a big gold mine here, largest gold mine east of the Mississippi, and so we got kind of started there with them, helping build the infrastructure of the plant and all of those things. But in the past 5 to 7 years, we've transitioned into more industrial. So big warehouse, advanced manufacturing, large big box developments like that, and some larger commercial sites as well. With also we've done some solar farm work, just trying to, our bread and butter is anything that's big, fast, and ugly. If it's got a lot of dirt to move, it's got a tight schedule. And if it's got some hairy constraints on the job, those are the ones that we'd like to go after. If it was easy, everybody could do it.
That's fair.
That's fair. We like that.
We like that too. We like things that are interesting, challenging, and that not everyone can do.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So and you got a little taste of Heath there, right? Like, I know for me, one of the things that drew me to Heath when we first met was Heath has a lot of sayings that you write down. Like he has a lot of things he's saying. Well, that's a good line, and that's what I've heard you say that before. Big, fast, or ugly. That's you.
Yeah. That's perfect. Heath always does kind of have those things that you like, and I think Heath feels like a Southern gentleman at heart here. We got get time to go out to dinner when we hang out every once in a while. Every 6 months or so, we try and get together.
Yeah.
And the things that you pick up at dinner, sitting next to Heath, are usually better than whatever happened in the meeting.
Yeah.
I try to avoid Heath a little bit in the meetings because he just wants to talk about equipment numbers.
He does. He does. He just wants to talk about equipment and numbers. The cat guy comes out.
The cat dealer, the cat.
I mean,
trainer.
it's a capital intensive business. So,
It is.
That's where most of the cash is tied up, is in the equipment and stuff. And so managing, knowing those costs and optimizing the fleet, and that's kind of where I geek out. So
Absolutely. No, I get it. We 100% agree. And it's a huge cost, right? I mean, you got tons of money tied up into these giant machines. You gotta make sure that you're utilizing them. You gotta make sure that they're running for you and you're getting the production that you need out of them. And you got to make sure there's not something secretly going wrong that's going to blow up in your face here and cause a problem. So life cycle of machines, utilization of machines, it's crucial.
Yeah. Another thing too with Heath that it's interesting, and we're on the podcast and we're talking, is where we are, for the most part, heavy civil owners look a certain way. Like, you know the guys. Like we could walk into a room that's a bunch of different construction, and you can pretty much pick out who's the civil guys, and you just sort of know. And Heath, being from the South, Heath to me doesn't look like, Heath doesn't look like the guy that's going to own a civil company. He's got, like, his pants are nice, his shirt's got a button down shirt on, he's looking good. He pulls up in a nice vehicle that's has a box in the back of it that has every bolt you could ever need for any cat ever built. And so it was interesting, to see, for me, as I got outside of our bubble of the Northeast of what we expect, and to see that, everybody's doing the same work, but the people who are doing it, they reflect where they came from. They reflect where they grew up, and their families and their attitudes and their beliefs, and it's just mildly different than here. And one of the really interesting things was when we first started to get together, and Herb Sargent was there. And Herb's another one that Herb said something, you probably write it down. And to see Herb and Heath, who are, different ages, different parts of the country, and they're actually so similar, in their approach and what they're doing. And I know Heath is a big fan of Herb, so I know Heath would say he's like, would love to achieve to be compared with Herb. But for me, there was a lot of similarities as I watched. And the best part of the peer group for me is that I end up sitting at a table with, Heath and Ford and Herb and Stephen Goffredo and these guys, and, that have made their way themselves, like found the path, built the companies, and you just sit there and listen. It's not often that I shut up, but when some of them are around, I'm fairly quiet.
That's fair. That's a fair statement.
Well, if you ask my team, I like to talk too. So for me to sit down and listen, it's got to be a pretty intriguing conversation and gleaning some good information from it. But I was going to tell you, y'all give me such a hard time about how I dress and all this stuff that I was this close to pulling out a tuxedo that I had in my closet, but I hadn't worn it in probably like 6 years, so I wasn't real sure that it was going to fit.
I bet you it fits.
Maybe one day, one of these peer group meetings, I'll march in a tuxedo.
I like it.
We all could laugh.
We would laugh, but none of us would be surprised.
No, we wouldn't be surprised. And I also don't own a tuxedo.
I don't either. Yeah, that would be a bigger surprise.
That would be a bigger
I walked
surprise.
into a meeting wearing a
if we own one.
If I even owned a tuxedo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ford probably owns.
I don't. He might. I don't know. He has a lot of suits.
Yeah, a lot of suits. I don't know if he owns a tuxedo or not. So my brother-in-law. I think I lost Heath's audio here, but my brother-in-law, he wears a tuxedo like all the time. It's so funny because like he'll show up to like something that is like black tie optional, right? And which usually means that, like in my world, that you're going to show up like I'll wear a jacket, all right, but he'll show up in a tuxedo, and it's that's just who he is, and I love it, but it's just not who I am.
Yeah, and Brian and I talk about this, Heath. There's some similarities with our like some of our siblings, and so my brother Mike, I always say, like double income, no kid over there. He's he's living the dream in his own mind, and Mike, we had an engagement party last weekend, and I'm like coming back from a soccer tournament, trying to figure out what clothes I have that I can wear that would fit the guidelines. I have not prepared. I know that's surprising to you, but I was not overly prepared. I realized I didn't have a pair of pants that I wanted. They must have been down the shore. And I get there, and my brother, everything is coordinated. I think that kid's shoelaces matched his belt. You know what I mean? Like, it was so ridiculous. I was like, how can we be related? That you know, he had this plan. This outfit was picked out, and I said, like, hey, what are you going to wear? Because that could be like a guide for me of what I should wear. But it's pointless anyway.
It's like a starting point, but you were never going to get.
I was never going to get to the starting line. Yeah, I was just hoping to be close. That it was not going to be bad showing.
Yeah.
You didn't want to show up as the prodigal son. So.
No.
Heath usually, I feel like we've talked about this before, Heath, but I think part of the presentation is in an effort to make sure that the people that you're dealing with know what they're getting, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's the same as, you know, like I'm very OCD about like how we set a job up, and, you know, from the day one, you know, is a fuel tank? Do we have our lay down? Is it organized? Is it easy to get to? And, you know, do we line equipment up, or is it just scattered about, you know, throughout the day? And it's one of those where if we have all of that and we're organized, then the job usually runs a lot smoother. And the client that's never been there, or, you know, GC or project manager, you know, if they show up and everything kind of looks in order, you know, we might not be on schedule or whatever, it just presents a lot better. So the same thing, you know, with appearance and stuff in the blue collar world, you know, trying to show an image, you know, we don't need to be out there in slacks running a bulldozer, but at the end of the day, a lot of that appearance goes a long way, especially with some of the clients, you know, that we have, these large manufacturing industrial sites, you know, they want to see the appearance too. And that usually translate into an efficient and safe, productive job. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of my thing. Like, I don't wear, you know, expensive pants. I buy $17 pants from Old Navy because I usually ruin about a pair every other week from grease or whatever. But, you know, just making that extra effort, you know, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, and
then into the team too, and it's setting that example.
And like, that's a great example with Heath, right? Like, in other words, you want to put a presentation, you want to look professional, look the part, right? But Heath, he's going to get his pants greasy. Like, Heath isn't the operator. You know what I mean? Heath owns Contour Mining, but he's going to get greasy because it's who Heath is, you know? And so that's what was so funny to me as we first met and interacted with Heath, is a guy who shows up, he's well-dressed, he's professional, he's intelligent, he speaks well, but he's going to get greasy, and he'll have every bolt for a cat in the back of that truck it hits. You know what I mean? And it's another one that you almost got there. One of Heath's, my favorite lines of Heath is, the job when you pulled up and the guy showed up with his shoes untied.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, shoelaces got to be tied.
You know, that was a flag raiser. It was an indicator. It was right. And I ended up being right. And then I was right. But we were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
A certain project manager that pulled up in a car. And I don't think I've ever seen a project manager drive a car. And I was like, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, he's probably not going to drive across this 30-acre site, you know, but it's rather, you know, put my antennas up when I see that. And try to
was it like a Subaru? Did it have all-wheel drive at least?
No, this was a project manager for a GC that I'll leave unnamed.
Okay.
But,
all right.
You know, back in the day, like back in the 70s, you know, when they were building all the interstates, back then, all the project managers drove like Crown Victorias and Lincoln Continentals. I mean, that's what they all drove.
Yeah.
LTDs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in today's world, you know.
And they drove them across the site. I mean, my father-in-law, he and his family build homes in the Pittsburgh area. His dad, who passed away not long ago, but his dad drove, it was his favorite vehicle in the world, but like the big station wagons with the wood paneling. And he had, like, if he found one at a reasonable price, he bought it because he wanted to drive them forever. So he had like 6 of them. And but he drove it everywhere. Didn't matter, on site, he was driving that thing across the site. It didn't.
Yeah. There's a great
him.
story, and I'll tell the story, but I can't get the details exactly right. But years ago, Gary had told me the story that John Haynes, who John was one of the two people that started H&K, and he would fly on the sites if he was mad, but he drove like an LTD-ish car. I don't remember what it was. Mm-hmm. Gary would tell me the exact car. But he said John came in and he was hot. He was mad. And he said he hit this dirt site at like 50 miles an hour in this car. It's like careening through the site. There's dirt going everywhere. John like kicks open. It's like a movie scene. He like kicks open the door, like lays into a bunch of people and fires like 4 people, gets back in the car and drives away. And Gary said, you just had to see it. Like this, he's not stopping. He's going to drive right into the middle of the site, And Gary had told me that story years ago. And there was somebody one time that made a pretty significant mistake. And I had it and drove from a distance. And I was actually laughing as I began to like rip into them because I like drove into the middle of the site in my truck, like dust flying everywhere, jumped out of the truck, started yelling. And I was like, we're here. We're like, that story was funny when I heard it. Like, why would you do that? And then you get to that point and you're that guy.
And then it happens.
Yeah. I think we've all been there. It's kind of like the Batmobile, it's power sliding into the job site.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
This is the opposite of what was discussed.
Yeah.
Please enlighten me on the need to change the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
So another interesting thing with Heath that has some similarities to Berg, right, is obviously Ford's kids are very young. But Ford certainly, I think has visions that this would be a generational company. Ford didn't build Berg Construction to last for 10 or 20 years. And Heath has kids. Heath's kids are older. And so Heath and I were talking, and Heath's son is actually old enough at this point that he can work in the field. So that's pretty exciting, I think, for Heath. Legally.
Yeah. If anybody from the Department of Labor is listening, he is 14 and he is legal to work. It's a limit what he can do, but
right. Yes. Yeah. Gotta watch the hours.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot to manage. But I know I sort of wanted to talk to with Heath what that's like, to have built the company and now be at a point where your son can legally work in the company, and what that looks like for you, right? Because we've locally we've seen, it was one of Ford's recognitions was that at some point all the owners of the companies that Ford looked at and said these are really solid companies would be 70. And Ford would still only be in his 40s. So if we could build a solid company that was able to do the work, at that point, what would happen in those transitions? Would there be more work available? That was sort of a thought. And, Heath's made it to the point where he's built the solid company and now his kids can be involved. So what does that look like for you, Heath, for you and the family?
Yeah, it's kind of cool because, like I said, my dad had a small company growing up. It was just a few employees. And so I'm an equipment guy. I'm an operator by trade. I'm not an engineer. I went to school for business, but everything I learned was on the weekends, summers, running equipment and learning from a bunch of old hands. So now my oldest son, his name's Chapman. Everybody calls him Chappie. But so now he's able to actually work in the business, and our HR manager made sure that I followed all the rules there. But so I've given him the opportunity, to come work with us and not work with me, which is riding around in the truck or whatever. I don't run equipment like I used to. So currently, he's out on a project we got here in town, a small industrial site. And I think yesterday he ran 815 for a little while, then ran smooth drum rollers, sealing up and stuff. And so he's enjoying it. He's working on the pipe crew a little bit. His mom's mama bear's like, I don't want him to get too hot and all that. And I'm like, well, when we started, I started out sweeping curb when I was 14 and then working in pipe ditch. And then what I would do is at lunchtime, I would eat my lunch throughout the day. And at lunch, I would go ask foreman, hey, can I jump on that excavator? Sure, go ahead. So while everybody's eating lunch, I'd go mess around or get on the dozer and make a mess and have to clean it up. I get yelled at. And then, eventually somebody would lay out one day and they were like, well, we don't have anybody else. You go run the bulldozer. Just don't screw anything up and run over anything. And
don't break stuff.
Continually, just kept doing that. And when I was in in college, I worked for Morgan Corp. Johnson's gave me a great opportunity to work with them. Very, one of the largest heavy civil contractors in the Southeast. So I would run a 631 all day. And then at lunchtime, I'd jump on the motor grader and blade haul roads or whatever. And so that just drive and got me out of the opportunities to run other equipment and just got the seat time and experience. So I was explaining to Chapman yesterday, I was like, at lunchtime, you eat your lunch while you're running a piece of equipment, and then at lunchtime, you can go jump on the excavator or whatever. I was like, because Mr. Everett is not going to let you run the mainline excavator during production. So if you want to do it, it's either got to be before shift, after shift, or at lunchtime and get some seat time. So it's kind of cool to see him get interested in it. And my dad, he recognized that I didn't want to do HVAC work. And he had a customer, one of the Theo brothers, which was a big, heavy civil contractor in the 60s that built a lot of the interstate system throughout South Carolina. And I remember we were sitting in his office one day and he had a stack of these magazines. And some of your Southern people will recognize this, but it was called the Dixie Contractor, of course, so Dixie, all that. And so it was, it would highlight big projects and all that. And I was just reading through all these magazines. And he came out and he was like, "Do you like that stuff?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he was like, "Well, take them with you. You're the only one that ever looks at them." So I took them all and, read through them and look through them at home. And one summer, my dad was like, "Hey, you're going to go work for Mike or for Shane and Joe this summer." I was like, "Why?" He was like, "Well, you like this equipment. You got all these magazines that you read and Equipment World and all that. Go try it for a summer and see if that's what you want to do." And so started that, and then got to running 621s, 623Ds, no air conditioning, no cushion hitch. The air ride seats didn't work, and just learned from a lot of really good old school hands. Before we had all this fancy GPS and drones and augmented reality and all these other tools that we have today, and just learned from a lot of those old hands. But so now, giving him the opportunity to say, "Hey, if you like doing this, like, you won't be successful in this business if you don't love it. Like, if you like it, that's one thing. You go get a paycheck, but you will not be successful because you have to be able to love it through the good, the bad, and the ugly, through the 3-inch rains, through the 105-degree index like we had last week here. You got to be able to push through it because it takes strong people to work on this side of the construction. Some of the strongest, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it takes someone who doesn't get ticked off and quit just because it's hot or it's raining or they had a bad day or something broke or whatever the case may be, right? I mean, it is it's not for everybody. Construction used to get the rap we've talked about here on the podcast that like is the place where people who go because they don't have skills to go do something else, or it's the place where moms and dads don't want their sons to end up, or whatever the case may be. And that's
you don't want them to be a ditch digger, but if you like it, it pays pretty good.
Yeah,
you guys support that, and you guys too.
Oh yeah,
lucrative business.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's not. Sometimes you have a bad day, right? And people are like, "I had a bad day at work," but like the reality is, to a lot of people, our good days are bad days. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, you said like, "Wow, how was work today?" Well, it was 100 degrees. It was dusty. I worked 10 hours, and I was outside. They're like, "Wow, it's rough." It's like, no, that was a good day.
That was good.
That was a good day,
that's
right?
rough.
I mean, like a bad day would have been if it was like 98 degrees and it's raining. There's mud everywhere. You can't work and you get sent home early. That's a bad day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of the things in the industry that really, really people don't appreciate is it's not just that it's hard. It is hard work. You know what I mean? Like sitting there digging a ditch is hard work. You know what I mean? Laying pipe is hard work. And then some of our skill positions with excavator and dozer operators, really skilled guys, and the machines have become much nicer, but you're bouncing around. There's a lot going on there.
Mhm.
But every day you're in the conditions. You're dealing with conditions that are not ideal. There's very few times of the year for us in the Northeast or for Heath down there where you got it's not 62 and sunny with a light breeze. Like that's just not normal
Right.
for where either of us
We get
operate.
that like 2 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, and you don't know what 2 weeks.
Right,
It
yeah.
could be sandwiched in between something that's really terrible.
Yeah, usually in like November.
Yeah. How's weather been for you, Heath? For us up here, we had like a early summer, then late spring, and we just can't get out of the way of storms right now. We're just getting
It was, the first part of the year. So here, we work year round. So we don't, even December, January, February, those are kind of wet months. But arguably, we get more rain in the summertime than we do in the winter as an average per month. But, in the summertime, we got sun and wind to dry it out. But, we work all the way through. Yeah, we're a little slower. We don't be moving 1 million yards of dirt in January unless it's all sand. So this year was kind of the first part of the year was a little bit wet. And then we went through I think it was like a month or so and month or more where it didn't hardly rain at all in like April and May. Yeah, May, because April showers and all that. So it didn't hardly rain. And then into May, 1st of June, we had I think 2 weeks ago, we had 10 inches of rain in 1 week.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird. We've got this industrial corridor we're working on. We've got 4 jobs within a mile of one another. One of them's 500,000 feet. Another one's 150 or whatever. And one job at the end of the road got a half an inch of rain. And we were they were calling on the radio because it's so close. We can switch radio channels and talk to them. And they were like, y'all better seal up. It's coming your way. It didn't even rain a drop on our job. So, and that's the weather we get here is this afternoon, we're going to have a late afternoon thunderstorm. We may get 0 or we may get 2 inches in 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's become crazy. So we have we get these private weather forecasts that get sent to us, and today says there's chance of rain, and it says the amount of rain. This is the new thing. It's what's become the new thing. So it said, I think it was 0.05 to 0.15. Then in parentheses, 1.5 or higher locally. What? Right. How do I deal with that exactly? So it could not rain at all, or
There's some spots.
or I could get an inch and a half of rain in 30 minutes. Type. You don't know, one or the other.
Yeah. Take your pick.
Yeah.
We had, when we kind of first got started back in 2012, in 2013, the summer, we got our first real job. It was a big overburden removal job in Junction City, Georgia. And it's 50 miles on the other side of nowhere. Okay. And no lie, we had 33 inches of rain in 38 days.
Oh my gosh.
And it was weird. In the morning, it would be dry up until 4 o'clock, and you'd see these thunderstorms building. And I can remember sometimes, and we were hauling a mile one way, and the dump, the dozer operator would call and be like, it's pouring down rain over here, and it wouldn't be raining in the cut area. And I remember I would get there at 6:30 in the morning, blade all the mud off, blade one lane, so we had at least one lane of haul road. And then by lunchtime, we were on the water truck trying to keep the dust down. And then at 4 o'clock, it would come again. And I can remember we were staying in Columbus, Georgia, in the hotel, it's the closest place. And I remember contemplating, I may have made a bad career decision. I didn't sign up for this kind of rain. Luckily, knock on wood, we hadn't had that kind of summer. But if you ask anybody in this area, they remember that summer of 2013. It was rough, but made it through it. So.
Heath, before we wrap up, you touched on it a couple minutes ago, and this is something that you and I have talked about in the past. You hinted at learning how to operate before the technology, but I feel like you're kind of a technology guy too. We talk a lot about your affinity for drones.
Oh yeah,
and the uses of them, and so I came across this the other day. I was reading something and it was talking about drone technology in construction and whether or not it was a gimmick or a game changer. And I know you've got some thoughts on this, so I thought it'd be interesting to touch on that.
I mean, so my previous job at the cat dealership, I was an operator trainer, but I also was in charge of all the machine control and guidance systems. So helping if they wanted laser systems or augmented total station or GPS or whatever it was. So I was kind of into that all the way back in 2003 when it really kind of started. And out of that, so I've always kind of been into, if there's a new tool, piece of technology to make it faster, like I'm not really that hard of a construction worker. I just want to find an easier, faster way to do it. Mm-hmm. And so since then, we've implemented where we've got machine control on most of all of our grading equipment. But we've also added some stuff, and probably, like you said, the drone has probably been the biggest game changer for us because it allows us to see the job without having to actually go there. And there's things that you can see there, like how much pipe's left on the ground. Well, I can go in and measure it. I can count the number of sticks that are on the ground. Oh, there's a leftover head wall in our PM meetings. Hey, I noticed a leftover head wall. Are y'all going to use that one? No, we don't need it. Okay, well, let's shorten this order, and save $1,300 for a 24-inch head wall and use it on another job. But it just gives you a real-time lens into the job. And it really helps us too. Like this morning, I was in the morning meeting dropping Chapman off at work. So I was there. They did JHA and all that. Mm-hmm. And then we pulled up the propeller flight for that site. I think we fly at least once a week. And we pulled it up, turned on the line work, and we were able to point to the guys. This is where we're cutting. This is going to be the haul route. This is where we're going to fill. We're going to fill a pad from this way to this way. Instead of just jump in the truck and then, every load they're asking, where do you want this one?
Right.
And we can really plan ahead that way. And it gives a real-time tool to show those guys because we can look at it overlaid on the current ground conditions and see where the stockpiles are. We can see if where we're going to lay the pipe down. Is it in cut area? Or is it in a fill area? Yeah, we can have a printed out cut fill map, but having that real time flight data with all our line work or surface laid over it is invaluable.
Yeah.
It is probably the best piece of technology, most valuable piece that we've bought and invested in the last 10 years. Or since we've been in business.
Yeah, Heath's been a big proponent of this the whole time, and
yeah,
we don't do a great job with it.
Propeller should give me a cut for all the people I've sold.
They probably do.
Some of them competitors do. That's how nice of a guy I am. I like sharing some of our secrets. But
so who flies it for you, Heath?
So the survey guys usually fly it. I used to fly it, but our COO, David, you guys know David, so he's a pilot too. He's an engineer, so he's very by the books. And I'm kind of, a little dodgy on some things. So I didn't have my pilot's license when we first came. He's like,
I was just you were just using it for personal
use, right? It's just a hobby.
Just a hobby for you.
Yeah. When we first started flying, you didn't have to have it years ago, but now obviously you got to have an FAA license. So we've got a couple of people that are licensed to fly it. I mean, it's so easy. You just go in and mark the waypoints where you want to fly. You push a button and it takes off and flies and then comes back. I mean, it's a phenomenal piece of equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we don't use it.
We don't use it nearly enough
as we should. But part of it is I think we've talked about this. One, you've got to create the data, and then you've got to have somebody who wants it. Right. So if you create a bunch of data that nobody utilizes, that doesn't do you any good. And if you got people who want the data and you can't create it, that doesn't do you any good. So it takes a blend of both for sure.
Yeah. And the propeller platform makes it easy where we're not processing the data in house. We just send it into the cloud and miraculously, it comes back as a surface. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I would say our project managers use it the most because at the end of the month, they're doing progress billing. So, how much dirt did we move? I mean, we can look at how many hydrants are in the ground. Yeah, you can have those reports daily, but also checking quantities against, erosion control or whatever it is. We can accurately, so if we get questioned on payout, we can say, all right, Mr. GC, here's a PDF printout of what was done from this date to this date, exactly what we've moved, exactly how much pipe's in the ground, etc.
Yeah. It's one of the, and this is it's an interesting part with Heath, right? Is there is a perception, right, of our business, construction and heavy civil, specifically, and you look at how technologically advanced Contour is and the way they use it. And it's just not what it's like not your grandfather's construction company. You know what I mean? Like Heath's going to send you a picture when you debate him whether you move that much dirt or not. He's going to send you a PDF, and the PDF's before and after, and there's no argument. There's nothing to argue about. You know what I mean? And he's made that transition more efficiently and more effectively than we have. You know what I mean? We still tend to rely on how much the guys said they moved, and then look at it and we're eyeballing it. And then we're in peer group meetings and we say that, and Heath just shakes his head and he's like, how can you guys not be using this technology? We're like, I don't know, because we did have it early. Yeah. We had it early. We used it a little bit. But to your point, it's one of the things we have to work through as a company is we'll invest in a lot of technology and collect a lot of data and then not use the data. And at some point we're like, okay, this is silly to even collect the data because we're not going to use it anyway.
We were doing a fair amount for a while. Like, Aiden, last summer, flew a lot of our sites pretty regularly, put it into Pix 4D.
Yep.
It just was not getting utilized.
It was just not getting utilized the way that we wanted to. Yeah, and that's where the disconnect is on a lot of the technologies. Is you can bring the technology in and you can train people to use it, but if all you do is collect the data and the data doesn't do you any good, then that's where you are. And that's something we always have to address internally because it's as a company we tend to have initiatives and we start something, and if we don't really have somebody who wants to champion it, Ford and I are good at starting things. We're not the OCD closer of Heath.
Yeah. Well,
we try to use all these different tools, but even still, like there are so many features in the new equipment from 2D grade control that we don't use like we should, and so that's part of kind of one of our initiatives in our development side is making sure we're taking the time to train somebody. I was explaining to a guy earlier, we're digging a pond that's wet. And I'm like, we can't put a bulldozer in the bottom. But he can tell you what the grade is. We can set it and bench it, and we can get it close enough, for the engineer, but making sure we're communicating all the tools that we have. I mean, there's so many that it's hard to use everything 100% effectively.
Well, it feels like, especially with things like that, I know us, we figure out how to use things well enough for the task at hand.
Oh, you're not going to say the word. You're being good.
Yeah, I'm being good. We figure out how to use things well enough for the task at hand, and then that's and then we can sort of manipulate it to do whatever we need it to do,
and that becomes the process.
That becomes the process, and the other 40% of the capabilities that exist never get utilized, seen, touched.
Yeah, coming out of even equipment, we're dealing with that right now. With HCSS sent out an email about this pre-construction they have, and we've had it the whole time.
Yeah.
And I said to Dylan, "This looks useful." And he was like, "It does look useful. We should put this in." And it was like it was a conversation that wasn't occurring. We should install this. We should install this, because somebody it's there. We could turn it on, But Dylan's going to have to build capacity into his schedule where he can figure out how it works. How are we going to use it? Develop a process, then turn. Just turning it on. All that does is create more data that we're not going to have. Nobody's responsible for.
Yeah, someone has to own it. Right?
Yeah. So
and it's the same if you have a job and you set up your cost codes for the job and there's 185 cost codes, from everything from install a 2-inch gate valve. We don't really need to know exactly what it costs to install the gate valve. We need to understand the whole length of pipe. Yeah. So too much data, like you said, is too cumbersome and it becomes too clouded. So sometimes you got to keep it simple, stupid on certain things,
Yeah.
and make sure you digest and utilize that data correctly.
I'm gonna like replicate that 15 seconds there and play it back and for Brad and for some of for Dylan Clemens and some of these other guys, because Brad and I, pretty much every time a new job gets set up, when we're looking at the budget, he's like, and we're like, why did we add 7 cost codes to the code book?
But it's funny because it's not. I would say it's not like something that you would expect us to do, right? Like Ford and I would make this as simple as you would allow us. Like if you said, like, what's the cost code? Work. I'd be like, that works. That works. I'd say, just put everything in there. Yeah, Brian, are we making money or not making money? Right?
It all goes in the same bucket.
It all goes in the same bucket. So the idea that we've ended up at this spot where there's, and I remember when we built the code book and they advised us to do it. You want to be as granular as possible. It's like, that's true, except we're not running a software company. Like I don't have, it doesn't, the gate valve, to Heath's point, it just doesn't matter. Yeah. Like in other words, at the end of the day, I'm going to make money or lose money on production rate. That's it. It doesn't, if there was 5 gate valves or 1 gate valve, did you get the pipe in as fast as we needed to get it in to make this work? And did you use the right equipment or were you oversized on equipment? Did you have too many people there? That's where you're effective or ineffective. It's, so, but it's a balancing act, because then on the pre-construction side, you got to have everything. Like you better know how many gate valves there are, otherwise that's how. So that handoff is where we really have to be better at Berg as a company has to be better, is going from making sure that the estimate has everything it could possibly need to the post-construction side when we're actually building it, to realizing, okay, we only need these cost codes, But then it still gets tricky because you got Textura and everything else, and then the GC has 400 cost codes, and you're trying to figure out where to put everything.
Yeah, then you have to take the estimate and resplit it up into all the items that make no sense.
Yeah, that make no sense. So.
Yeah.
Well, a quick hit on wedding planners is like the perfect place to end with Heath.
The wedding planners.
Good old wedding planners.
Yeah, I like that. Well, Heath, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us. We got the technology figured out pretty well here to patch you in from South Carolina. And it's always fun. It's always fun to chat. And I think we'll probably we'll see you in August here sometime. I think
we'll see you in a month or so.
Yeah, a couple weeks, month. Yeah. But really appreciate it. Folks, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you got something from this episode, and we hope you come back for another one.